behind which luxury cars glided like silent ghosts. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, silk drapes that sighed in the breeze. But Clara's eyes, soft brown, shadowed with exhaustion, weren't admiring the view. They were fixed on the empty space beside her on the king-sized bed. Victor hadn't come home again. Not that he ever really came home anymore. For months, maybe even years, he'd existed like a phantom in their marriage. Present in name, in legal documents, in the photos on the mantel, but absent in every way that mattered. He'd kiss the children's foreheads in passing, murmur a distracted good night to Clara, and vanish into his study or his car or another country, always with that same tight smile that never reached his eyes. "May?" A small voice broke the silence. Clara turned. There stood Theo, her youngest, barefoot in striped pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit by one ear. His hair was sleep mussed, his cheeks still round with baby fat. 6 years old, and already learning to tiptoe through the quiet of their house, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. "Why isn't Dad here for breakfast?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Clara knelt, setting her cup aside, and pulled him into her lap. She breathed in the scent of his shampoo, coconut and innocence, and held him a little tighter than necessary. "He had an early meeting, May-Amor," she said, smoothing his hair. The lie tasted bitter, but soft on her tongue. "But I made your favorite, panquecas with banana." Theo nodded, but his eyes flickered toward the empty chair at the head of the dining table. It was always empty now. From the hallway, footsteps light, urgent. Livia appeared, 17 and already carrying the weight of the world in her posture. Her school blazer hung neatly on her shoulders, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "May," she said, voice low. "The bank called again. They said the joint account is frozen." Clara's breath hitched. She didn't let go of Theo, didn't let her expression falter. But inside, something cracked. A tiny, nearly silent fracture in the foundation she'd built so carefully over 15 years of marriage. Victor Langford wasn't just distant. He was pulling the threads. And she knew, with a sinking dread that pooled cold in her stomach, that soon everything would unravel. She forced a smile. "It's probably a mistake, Livia. I'll call them later." Then to Theo, "Go wash your face, Mayoanjo. Breakfast in 5 minutes." When they were gone, Clara stood. She walked to the closet. Victor's side still immaculate, suits pressed, shoes gleaming, and opened the top drawer. Beneath folded ties, she found what she'd been dreading. A single sheet of paper, crisp and unsigned. "Clara, I can't do this anymore. I need to start over, somewhere far from everything that reminds me of this. Don't try to find me. Take care of the children. V." No explanation, no goodbye, just abandonment wrapped in sterile business letter tone. Her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the paper trembling in her hand. Outside, birds sang. A gardener hummed as he trimmed the hedges. The world kept turning, indifferent. But inside that perfect house, Clara Langford, wife, mother, woman who had once dreamed of becoming an architect before love asked her to put her dreams on hold, felt the first shiver of a storm she hadn't seen coming. And in that moment, clutching a letter that felt like a death sentence, she made a silent vow. "No matter what happens, my children will never feel unloved. Not like this. Not ever. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada topico que for desenvolve. Mi conti sobrio topico tu com dialogo como su fosso espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com vida moco. Com vidos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters 9:58 p.m. before the fall, there was still light, not the harsh, revealing kind, but the golden, filtered glow that poured through tall windows in the late afternoon, catching dust motes in slow dance, gilding the edges of family photos, softening the sharp lines of a life built on appearances. It was the kind of light that made everything seem whole, even when it wasn't. The Langford home, perched on a quiet hill in Murrumbidgee, was a masterpiece of curated calm. Italian marble, hand-woven rugs from Morocco, a grand piano no one played but everyone admired. To visitors, it whispered success. But if you listened closely, beneath the hum of the air conditioning and the chime of crystal glasses, you could hear the silence between husband and wife. Long, heavy, full of words never spoken. Clara moved through those rooms like a ghost in her own life. Graceful, efficient, always smiling. She organized charity galas, checked homework, scheduled dentist appointments, and remembered Victor's favorite oolong tea. But at night, when the children were asleep and the house exhaled into stillness, she'd sit alone at the kitchen island, fingers tracing the rim of an untouched wine glass, wondering when together had become just two people sharing a roof. One Sunday morning, sunlight spilling across the breakfast table like liquid honey, the illusion almost held. "Mommy, look!" Nina, 9 years old, freckled and bright, held up a painted rock shaped like a heart. "Art class today. Ms. Beatrice said I'm the best at textures." Clara reached out, brushing a flour-dusted thumb over her daughter's cheek. She'd been baking bread since dawn, the kind Victor used to love. "You're so talented, meu tesoro," she said, voice warm, eyes tender. "Put it on the shelf with the others." Across the table, Livia scrolled through college brochures, her brow furrowed. "NYU has a full scholarship for international students in journalism," she murmured, more to herself than anyone. Clara's heart swelled with pride and a quiet ache. "She's gonna fly so far away." "You'll get in," she said firmly. "You're brilliant." Then came Theo, racing in with his older brother Mateus, both breathless from a pillow fight in the playroom. "May," Mateus said, "Dad's coming home tonight." Theo beamed, as if it were gospel. Clara's spoon stilled in her coffee cup. Mateus, 13, sharp-eyed and already too observant, glanced at her, then looked down. "He might," he mumbled, suddenly unsure. From the doorway, Isabella, 15, quiet, the watcher of the family, leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "He said that last week. And the week before." A silence fell, thick as velvet. Then the front door opened. All 5 heads turned. Victor stepped in, tailored suit, expensive cologne, briefcase in hand. He looked tired, but polished, detached, like a man returning to a hotel, not a home. "Good morning," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. His eyes skimmed over Clara. No kiss, no embrace, before landing on Theo. "Hey, Campillo." Theo lit up like a firework. "Dad, you're here." Victor ruffled his hair with one hand, already walking toward the espresso machine. "Just for lunch. Meeting at 2. Clara stood, wiping her hands on her apron, though they weren't dirty. "I made your bread," she said softly. He paused. "Oh, thanks." "No, it smells amazing." "No, you always know how to make my day better. Just thanks." Like she'd handed him a dry receipt. Later, while the children chattered over grilled cheese sandwiches, Clara stood at the sink, washing dishes she didn't need to wash. Victor sat at the dining table, scrolling through emails on his phone. "You've been distant," she finally said, voice steady, carefully neutral. "The kids miss you." He didn't look up. "Work's intense, Clara. You know how it is." "I used to know," she replied, turning to face him. Water dripped from her fingers. "Back when you'd come home and tell me about your deals. When you'd laugh at dinner. When you'd hold my hand." He finally met her eyes. There was no anger, no guilt, just a kind of weary impatience, as if emotions were inconveniences slowing down his day. "People change," he said simply, and that was it. The children didn't notice. They were laughing over a cartoon on the tablet, crumbs on their cheeks, hearts still trusting the world to be safe. But Clara saw it then, the slow withdrawal, the quiet severing. He was already gone. His body was there, but his soul had packed its bags long ago. She wanted to scream, to beg, to shake him and ask, "What did we do wrong? Was it me? Was it never enough?" Instead, she smiled, because the bread was still warm, because Theo still believed his father would stay, because, in that moment, her job wasn't to mourn the marriage. It was to protect the children from the tremor beneath their feet. She turned back to the sink, blinking fast. But 3 days later, the world tilted. It started with a call from the bank. "Senora Langford, there seems to be an issue with your joint account. It's been closed. By Mr. Langford's instruction." Her voice didn't shake. "Not yet. Closed? But our mortgage, the children's school fees?" "I'm sorry, madam. All assets under his sole control have been transferred or liquidated. You're no longer authorized on any of the accounts." The phone slipped from her hand. Then came the lawyer's letter, delivered by courier, sealed in crisp white envelopes that felt like ice in her palms. Victor had signed paperwork weeks ago. The house? Not hers. The cars? Gone. Even the trust fund for the children? Terminated, citing restructuring. And the final blow. A single envelope left on the kitchen counter the morning he vanished for good. No note on the door. No last glance. Just gone. Inside, one sheet of paper. "Clara, I can't live this life anymore. I need to disappear, to start over where no one knows my name. Don't try to contact me. Don't wait. Take care of the kids. V." No apology. No explanation. No. "I'm sorry I broke your heart." Just a clean, clinical exit like deleting a file. She read it 3 times, then crumpled it in her fist, pressed it to her chest, and sank to the floor, the marble cold through her thin cotton dress. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Not a sob yet, just the raw, animal sound of something vital being torn away. "May?" Livia stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "What's going on? Why did the security guard say we have to leave the house?" Clara's throat closed. She stood slowly, smoothing her dress, forcing her spine straight. "It's a misunderstanding, Livia. We'll figure it out." "Figure what out?" Livia's voice cracked. The electricity was cut off this morning. Mateus couldn't charge his laptop. Nina's ballet recital is in 2 days. Her costume isn't even paid for. Clara reached for her, but Livia stepped back. "Don't. Just tell me the truth." And so she did. "He left us, Livia. He took everything. We have to go." The words hung in the air like shrapnel. Livia didn't cry. Her face hardened. First into disbelief, then into something colder. "He just walked away? With 5 kids? With you?" Clara nodded, tears finally spilling. "He didn't even say goodbye." That night, the movers came, hired by Victor's lawyers. They packed what little was legally hers. A few suitcases, family photos, the children's favorite toys, Theo's stuffed rabbit. The grand piano stayed. The silk curtains stayed. The life they knew gone. As they stood on the sidewalk with their bags, watching strangers carry their memories into a van, Isabella whispered, "Where do we go now?" Clara looked at her children. Faces pale, eyes wide with a fear they didn't understand yet. She took Theo's hand in one, Nina's in the other. "We go forward," she said, voice trembling but clear. "Together." But inside, her mind raced. No money, no home, no safety net. Just 5 children who depended on her for everything, and a name now tarnished by scandal. The wife the Tycoon abandoned. 2 days later, a cousin in a distant neighborhood offered a tiny apartment. 2 rooms, a leaky faucet, walls thin enough to hear neighbors arguing. It smelled of mildew and old paint. The floorboards groaned. The fridge hummed like a tired beast. But it was shelter. Clara tucked Theo into a mattress on the floor that night, brushing hair from his forehead. "Are we poor now, May?" he asked, eyes wide. She kissed his temple. "We're not poor in love, Mayu Anjo, and as long as we have that, we'll be okay." But as she sat in the dark, listening to her children breathe, a new terror crept in. Not just of hunger or cold or bills, but of becoming invisible, of being forgotten, of failing them when they needed her most. And yet, in that cramped, broken space, something else stirred. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. Because if Victor thought abandonment would erase them, he was wrong. They were still here, and Clara Langford would move mountains. Quietly, fiercely, alone if she had to, before she let her children feel worthless. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent lights. But inside that tiny room, a mother's love burned like a quiet flame in the storm. Clara hadn't slept more than 3 hours straight since they'd left the house. She spent her days on the phone. Doctors' offices, schools, social services. Her voice calm, rehearsed, while inside, panic gnawed at her ribs like a rat in the walls. "Yes, we've relocated," she'd say. "No, there's no change in the children's enrollment. Everything's fine." But nothing was fine. The school called about Livia's overdue tuition. The pediatrician's office left a message. Theo's checkup was scheduled, but without insurance, the visit would cost 300 reis upfront. 300. She counted the coins in her purse. 48 reis, 2 bus tickets, and a crumpled receipt. She stood in the tiny kitchen, staring at the last loaf of bread, wondering if she should cut it into 6 slices or 5. "May?" Nina appeared in the doorway, clutching her painted rock heart. Ms. Beatrice said, "If I don't bring my art supplies tomorrow, I can't join the mural project." Clara's chest tightened. The supplies alone cost more than she'd made selling 2 cakes at the weekend market. "I'll see what I can do, amor," she said, forcing lightness into her voice. But that night, after tucking everyone in, she sat at the small plastic table, a notebook open, scribbling numbers that refused to add up. Rent, 950. Electricity, 120. Food, impossible. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find the landlord, a stout man with tired eyes and a clipboard. "Senora Langford, I know you just moved in, but the rent was due yesterday." "I know," she said quickly. "I'm waiting on a payment. Just a few more days." He shifted. "I've got my own bills, senora. I can't." He trailed off, glancing past her into the dim apartment, where Mateus sat on the floor studying by phone light. "Just try to have something by Friday." When he left, Clara leaned her forehead against the door, eyes burning. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Clara, it's Roberto, Victor's former CFO. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." He cleared everything, transferred assets to offshore accounts weeks before he left. He planned this for months. Her hands shook. "There's nothing left in Brazil under his name. Not even the car you drove. It was leased." She dropped the phone. Planned. Not a sudden breakdown. Not a midlife crisis. A calculated exit. A strategic erasure. He hadn't just left. He'd erased them. The next morning, she took the children to school on foot, 2 kilometers each way. Her shoes were worn at the heel, but she walked tall, holding Theo's hand, adjusting Nina's backpack, nodding to neighbors as if this were normal. But inside, shame coiled around her heart like wire. At the school gate, a woman she used to lunch with at charity events, elegant coat, designer bag, paused, eyes widening. "Clara? Is that you?" Clara forced a smile. "Hello, Mariana." Mariana glanced at her children's second-hand uniforms, then back at her face. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I'd heard rumors. I didn't believe them." She lowered her voice. "He just walked away?" Clara's throat tightened. "Life changes." Mariana patted her arm. Too quickly, too lightly. "Well, if you ever need anything." She didn't finish. Just turned and walked off, already pulling out her phone. The children didn't notice, but Livia did. "She looked at you like you're dirty," she whispered as they walked home. "No," Clara said fiercely. "She looked at me like I'm weak, and I'm not." But that night, as rain poured again and the leak in the ceiling dripped into a pot with a steady plink, 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 Clara sat on the edge of her mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. She thought of Victor in some penthouse abroad, sipping whiskey, free of diapers and homework and grocery lists. Free of her. Tear fell, then another. But she didn't sob. She pressed her fist to her mouth and let the grief pour out in silence. so the children wouldn't hear. Because tomorrow, she had to stand in line at the social services office. Tomorrow, she had to explain to Isabella why her ballet class was canceled. Tomorrow, she had to pretend, again, that this wasn't the end of everything. But as she wiped her face and rose to check on Theo, something hardened inside her. This wasn't just poverty. This was betrayal wearing the mask of silence. And if Victor thought she'd crumble into nothing, he didn't know who he'd left behind. She wasn't just a wife. She was a mother. And no storm, no abandonment, no leaky roof, no judgmental glance would ever make her stop fighting for her children. Instead, she woke before dawn, washed uniforms in the sink, packed lunches with half portions of rice and beans, and walked the younger ones to school. Never complaining, never crying. But Clara saw the way her daughter's shoulders tensed when other girls whispered behind manicured hands, or how she lingered by the school notice board, staring at scholarship flyers she no longer believed were for her. One evening, as Clara stitched a tear in Mateus's school shirt under the dim bulb, Livia appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw set. "I got a job," she announced, voice flat. Clara's needle paused mid-stitch. "A job? At the market, cleaning shelves after hours. They pay in cash." She didn't meet her mother's eyes. "It's 80 reis a night. 3 nights a week." Clara put the shirt down slowly. "Livia, you're 17. You have exams. University applications." "University?" Livia laughed. A short, sharp sound that broke Clara's heart. "May, look around. We're eating bread with sugar because there's no jam. Theo's shoes are splitting at the sole. And you're sewing the same shirt for the 3rd time this month." Her voice cracked. "I can't just study while you're killing yourself." Clara stood, walked to her, and cupped her daughter's face in her hands. Livia's skin was warm, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You listen to me?" Clara said, voice low but trembling with intensity. "Your job is to learn, to dream, to rise, not to carry this weight. Not yet. But who else will?" Livia whispered, tears finally spilling. "You're working 2 jobs, you sleep 3 hours a night, and you still smile like everything's fine. When is it your turn to rest?" Clara pulled her into a fierce embrace, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair, still faintly coconut from the cheap shampoo they now used. "My turn comes when I see you walking across that stage in a cap and gown," she murmured into her hair. "Not a second before." Later that night, after the apartment fell silent, Clara sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. She thought of her own dreams, architecture, blueprints, buildings that reached the sky. She'd put them aside for love, for family, and now, love had vanished. But family remained, and so did she. The next morning, Theo tugged at her sleeve as she tied his shoelaces. "May, when is Dad coming back?" Her hands stilled. She didn't lie this time. "I don't know, Meu Anjo," she said softly. "But whether he comes or not, you'll always have me. Always." Theo studied her face, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, I don't need him. I have you." His words should have comforted her. Instead, they carved a deeper ache in her chest. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to choose between a father who vanished and a mother who never left. Isabella, usually silent, began spending hours sketching in a tattered notebook. Faces, buildings, storm clouds. One day, Clara found a drawing of their old house, but with cracks running through the walls and a tiny figure standing alone on the roof. "Is that me?" Clara asked gently. Isabella didn't answer, just closed the book and walked away. Mateus, once loud and energetic, now moved through the apartment like a shadow. He stopped inviting friends over, stopped playing soccer. When Clara asked why, he just shrugged. "They ask questions. I don't have answers." Only Nina still laughed, bright, sudden bursts that filled the small rooms like sunlight breaking through clouds. But even she had changed. She'd stopped asking for new art supplies. Instead, she reused paper, drew on envelopes, painted rocks with watercolor made from crushed berries. One afternoon, Clara found her sitting on the fire escape, carefully placing her painted rocks along the railing. Tiny hearts, birds, stars. "What's this, meu amor?" Clara asked, sitting beside her. "It's a path," Nina said, serious. "So Dad can find his way back. If he ever wants to." Clara's breath caught. She wrapped an arm around her daughter, pulling her close. The wind tugged at their hair. Below, traffic roared. Above, a single plane cut through the sky, heading somewhere, anywhere. And in that moment, Clara understood. Each child was grieving in their own silence. Livia with anger, Mateus with withdrawal, Isabella with art, Theo with loyalty, Nina with hope. And her job wasn't just to feed them or clothe them. It was to hold their broken pieces together until they remembered how to be whole. Later that week, as rain soaked the streets again, Clara returned from her shift at the bakery, her hands raw from dough, her feet aching, only to find Livia waiting by the door, holding a sealed envelope. "For you," she said, voice tight. "From the school." Clara opened it with trembling fingers. It was a notice. Final warning. Outstanding balance of 2,400 Brazilian reals. Failure to settle within 7 days will result in suspension of all 5 students. Her knees nearly gave out. 7 days. 7 days to find more than 2,000 reais, or her children would lose their education. Their only lifeline out of this hole. She looked at Livia, at the younger ones peeking from the doorway, eyes wide with fear they couldn't name. And for the first time since Victor left, Clara felt the ground truly slipping beneath her. But she didn't collapse. She took a breath, then another, and whispered, more to herself than to them, "We'll find a way," because giving up wasn't an option. She didn't sleep. She barely ate. Every waking hour was a calculation. How many loaves could she bake before dawn? How many neighbors would buy her cakes if she offered them half price? Could she sell her wedding ring? The simple platinum band Victor had slipped on her finger 15 years ago in a small chapel in Ouro Preto. She'd kept it not for love, but for memory. Now, even memory had a price. On the third night, she sat at the plastic table, the school notice pinned under a chipped mug, counting coins by candlelight. 342 reais, less than a sixth of what she needed. Theo stirred in his sleep, murmuring, "May." She rose quietly, tucked his thin blanket around his shoulders, and whispered, "I'm here, meu anjo, always." But as she turned back to the table, her eyes fell on her old sketchbook, tucked beneath a stack of bills, dusty, forgotten. Inside, blueprints of houses she dreamed of designing, curved roofs, open courtyards, gardens that welcomed light. She hadn't drawn in over a decade. A memory surfaced. Her professor at university years ago, tapping her shoulder after class. "Clara, you see space like a poet sees words. Don't let anyone make you stop." She'd stopped for Victor, for the children, for the life she thought was enough. Now that life was ashes. And from ashes, sometimes something new grows. The next morning, before sunrise, she washed her face, tied her hair back, and put on her only clean blouse, the one with the small tear near the collar she'd carefully mended with invisible thread. She kissed each child's forehead and left before they woke. She walked 6 blocks to the community center, where a small job board hung by the entrance. Most postings were for cleaning, deliveries, childcare. But one caught her eye. Administrative assistant needed, Escola Esperança. Part-time, basic accounting skills required. Apply in person. Escola Esperança, the Hope School. She almost laughed. Hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But she went anyway. The school was modest. A converted house with peeling paint but bright murals on the walls and children's laughter spilling from open windows. Inside, the air smelled of chalk, soap, and old books. A woman in her 60s, hair silver and eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from a desk piled with papers. "Can I help you?" "I'm here about the job," Clara said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The woman, Dona Elza, the director, studied her. Not with pity, but with quiet assessment. "You have experience?" "I managed household budgets for 15 years. Clara said carefully. Balanced accounts, negotiated with vendors, tracked expenses down to the centavo. I also studied architecture, so I understand spatial planning, project costing. She trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. I know it's not corporate experience, but I learn fast, and I need this. Dona Elza didn't ask about her past, didn't mention the designer blouse or the way her shoes were worn thin. She simply nodded toward a chair. Sit. Tell me how you'd organize our supply inventory with zero budget increase. Clara blinked. Then, without hesitation, she began to speak. Clear, precise, eyes alight with a fire she hadn't felt in years. She described a color-coded system, a digital log using free software, partnerships with local bakeries for surplus bread as student snacks. Dona Elza listened, then smiled just slightly. You start Monday, she said. Half day, 20 reis an hour. It wasn't much, but it was a lifeline. That evening, Clara returned home with groceries, real food, not just rice and beans. She made feijoada, the rich scent filling the tiny apartment like a promise. The children stared at the table, bewildered. Did you win the lottery, May? Mateus asked, half joking. No, she said, placing a full plate before Theo. But I got a job. Livia's eyes narrowed. At the bakery? No, at a school. As an assistant. Silence. Then Isabella spoke, quiet but sharp. Will it be enough to keep us in school? Clara met her gaze. It's a start, and I won't stop until it's more. Later, as she washed dishes, Livia appeared beside her, rolling up her sleeves. Teach me your system, she said. The one you told Dona Elza about. If we're gonna climb out of this, I want to climb with you. Tears pricked Clara's eyes, but she nodded. That night, for the first time in weeks, she didn't lie awake counting debts. She lay in the dark, listening to her children's even breaths and imagined blueprints. Not of mansions, but of futures. Of Livia in a newsroom, Mateus in an engineering lab, Isabella in an art gallery, Nina teaching children to paint, Theo grown, kind-eyed, never wondering if he's loved, and herself, not as Victor's abandoned wife, but as Clara Langford, mother, survivor, builder of new worlds from broken ones. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, hope, a fragile, stubborn seed, began to take root. But even as she drifted towards sleep, a question whispered in the dark. What if Victor comes back? She didn't know, but for the first time she realized it didn't matter, because she was already rising. And this time, she wouldn't build her life on someone else's foundation. She'd build it on her own. The school buzzed with the kind of chaos only children can create. Shouts from the playground, the squeak of chairs, the rhythmic thump of a jump rope against concrete. But beneath the noise, there was warmth, order, purpose. Dona Elza greeted her with a thermos of strong coffee and a stack of files. Start with the supply ledger, she said, not unkindly. We're missing 3 months of receipts, and the math doesn't add up. Clara sat at a small desk near the window, sunlight catching the dust motes in the air. She opened the ledger and felt something inside her click back into place. Numbers, patterns, logic. It was like rediscovering a language she'd once spoken fluently but had long forgotten. By noon, she'd reorganized the entire inventory system, cross-referenced missing receipts with vendor emails, and drafted a proposal to reduce paper waste by 40% using a shared digital folder. Dona Elza stopped by, arms crossed, but her eyes were gleaming. You've been busy. I couldn't help it, Clara admitted, a small, genuine smile playing on her lips. It's satisfying to fix what's broken. That afternoon, as she sorted files, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Clara Langford? She turned. A man stood in the doorway, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, wearing a rumpled suit that looked like it had seen better decades. His eyes were tired, but kind. Yes, he hesitated, then stepped inside, lowering his voice. My name is Dr. Almeida. I was Victor's personal physician for over 10 years. Clara's breath caught, her fingers stilled on the ledger. I heard what happened, he continued, voice low. Not from him, from mutual friends who couldn't stay silent. I'm so sorry, Clara. Truly. She didn't speak. Couldn't. The name Victor in that room, among the chalkboards and children's drawings, felt like a violation. Dr. Almeida reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. He's in New York, living under a different name, with a woman half his age. He told people he was liberated. His jaw tightened. But I saw him, Clara, the week before he left. He was empty, hollow, not joyful, just running. Clara's eyes burned, but she kept her voice steady. Why tell me this? Because you deserve the truth, he said. And because your children, they're still his no matter how far he runs. He's denying them support, but worse, he's denying them history. Their father chose to vanish, but you chose to stay. And that is real courage. He placed the envelope on her desk. There's nothing in there that will give you money or justice. Just confirmation. And maybe closure. When he left, Clara didn't open it right away. She waited until the school emptied, until the last child's laughter faded down the street. Then, alone in the quiet office, she tore it open. Inside was a single printed page. A copy of a private email Victor had sent to his lawyer. Finalize the transfer. Cut all ties. She'll manage. She always does. The kids are her responsibility now. I need to disappear completely. No remorse. No love. Just logistics. A sob rose in her throat, but she swallowed it. Hard. Instead, she folded the paper neatly, walked to the small restroom, and dropped it into the toilet. Watched it sink. Flushed it away. She wouldn't carry his indifference like luggage. When she returned to her desk, Dona Elsa stood there holding 2 mugs of tea. She didn't ask what the envelope was. She just handed Clara 1 mug and said, "You look like you could use this." Clara took it, hands trembling just slightly. "Thank you." Dona Elsa sat across from her. You know, this school was founded by a woman who lost everything in the 1990s crash. She taught herself accounting from library books, fed 20 children with 1 pot of soup, built this place brick by brick. She paused. "You remind me of her." Clara looked down at her hands. Rough from cleaning, stained with ink, but steady. "Maybe," she whispered, "broken things can still be useful." That night, she came home with more than groceries. She brought home a library book, basic accounting principles, and a borrowed laptop from the school, its keys worn but functional. After tucking the children in, she sat at the table, opened the laptop, and typed into the search bar, "Free online accounting courses, beginner." Livia appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, but her expression was different now. Less angry, more curious. "You're studying?" "I have to," Clara said softly. "If I'm going to keep you all in school, I need to be more than just mom who makes cakes. I need to be someone who builds." Livia sat beside her. "Then teach me too." And so, in the dim glow of a single bulb, mother and daughter leaned over the screen, shoulders touching, eyes fixed on a future neither could yet see, but both were finally daring to believe in. Outside, the city slept, but inside that tiny apartment, a quiet revolution began. Not with shouts, but with keystrokes. Not with revenge, but with resilience. And far away, in a sleek New York apartment, Victor Langford poured himself a drink, unaware that the woman he'd discarded was no longer drowning. Small municipal grant by drafting a proposal so clear and compelling that the city official called it a masterclass in community care. She was studying every night, accounting modules, budgeting software, nonprofit management. Livia now helped her with research, her old spark returning in flashes of sharp insight. The children were back in school, their uniforms mended but clean, their eyes less shadowed. But the past has a way of knocking, just when you think the door is closed. It happened on a Tuesday. Clara was sorting invoices in the school office when the phone rang. Dona Elsa was out, so she answered. "Escola Esperanca, good afternoon," she said, pen in hand. A pause. Then a voice, familiar, hesitant. "Clara?" Her blood turned to ice. It wasn't Victor, but it was someone from that life. Someone she hadn't heard from in years. Rafael? She whispered. Rafael Mendez, Victor's oldest friend. His former business partner. The man who'd toasted their wedding with champagne and hugged her at their last Christmas party, before everything collapsed. I didn't know if you'd still answer, he said, voice strained. I've been trying to find you for months. Clara's grip tightened on the receiver. Why? A sigh. Long, heavy. Because I owe you the truth. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you. She didn't speak, just listened, heart hammering against her ribs. He's in New York, Rafael said quietly, living in a penthouse in Tribeca. He's with a woman named Elise. She's a curator at MoMA. They've been together for almost a year. Clara closed her eyes. She already knew, but hearing it spoken aloud from someone who knew him made it solid. Real. Final. He told people you two were never really married in spirit. Rafael continued, disgust creeping into his tone. Said you held him back with the kids, the domestic life, that he needed freedom to become who he was meant to be. A bitter laugh escaped Clara's lips. And you believed him? No, Rafael said fiercely. I saw how you held that family together while he chased deals and ego. I saw you cancel your own dreams so he could sleep easy at night. And when he vanished, I stayed silent, out of loyalty, out of fear. And I've regretted it every day since. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of children singing in the courtyard. Why tell me now? Clara asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because last week, Rafael said, I saw a photo online of him and Elise at some gala, and in the background, there was a painting. One you painted, Clara, the one of the olive tree in Auro Preto. The one you gave him for your 10th anniversary. Her breath caught. That painting had hung above their bed for years. She'd painted it during a rare weekend alone. Just her, a canvas, and the golden light of the Minas Hills. He kept it, she murmured. He kept it and didn't keep you, Rafael said, voice breaking. And that's the cruelest part. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. Thank you for telling me, Rafael. Clara, I'm so sorry. For everything. If there's anything I can do, money, legal help. No, she said firmly. Don't send money. Don't try to fix this with guilt. Just don't forget us. Don't let him rewrite history. I won't, he promised. You raised 5 incredible human beings while he ran from his own reflection. That's not weakness. That's strength most men can't even comprehend. When she hung up, Clara sat very still. The office was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the window, warming the wood of her desk. She opened her laptop, not to study, but to her personal folder. There, buried deep, was a scanned copy of that painting. She hadn't looked at it in years. She clicked it open. The olive tree stood strong against a golden sky, roots deep, branches wide. She'd painted it as a symbol of endurance, a family, of love that grows slowly, quietly, but never breaks. And now Victor displayed it in a home built on lies. A tear fell onto the keyboard. But then, she straightened, wiped her face, closed the file, because she realized something. He could take the house, the money, the name, but he could never take what that painting meant. That meaning lived in her children, in the way Theo still hugged her every morning. In the way Livia now debated ethics in her essays. In the way Nina painted rocks with hearts on them, not for her father, but for her mother. That night, over a simple dinner of rice, beans, and fried plantains, Livia looked up from her plate. You were quiet today, May. Everything okay? Clara met her daughter's eyes, so much like her own, but stronger now. Someone from the past called, she said simply. But it doesn't matter. Because we're not there anymore, Isabella said quietly from the corner, not looking up from her sketchbook. Clara smiled. Exactly. Later, as she washed dishes, she caught her reflection in the dark window. Tired, thinner, hair pulled back in a loose bun. But her eyes were no longer haunted. They were clear, focused, Because the man who abandoned her had become irrelevant. She wasn't fighting to win him back. She was fighting to build something he could never understand. A life not defined by his presence or his absence. And in that moment, standing in a tiny kitchen with soap on her hands and the sound of her children laughing in the next room, Clara Langford felt something she hadn't in years. It started with Nina. She'd been quieter than usual, her usual bursts of laughter replaced by listless afternoons curled on the couch with her sketchbook. Clara chalked it up to the change of seasons, or maybe teenage moodiness creeping in early. But then came the headaches, the pale skin, the way she pushed her food around the plate, saying, "I'm not hungry," when her eyes betrayed the truth. She was too tired to chew. One rainy Thursday, Clara found her asleep on the kitchen floor, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of a bird with broken wings. "Nina!" She rushed to her side, heart slamming against her ribs. Nina stirred, dazed. "May, I just felt dizzy, like the room spun." Clara pressed a hand to her forehead, cool, clammy. "When did this start?" "A few days ago. But I didn't want to worry you." The words cut deeper than any blade. Clara carried her to bed, tucked the thin blanket around her shoulders, and sat beside her, stroking her hair. In the dim light, she saw what she'd missed. Dark circles under Nina's eyes, collarbones too sharp beneath her skin, arms thinner than they should be. She'd been giving her children larger portions. She was sure of it. But food was still scarce. Meat was a luxury. Milk, expensive. Fruits only went on sale. She'd stretched every cent, but some things couldn't be stretched. Nutrition, health, childhood. The next morning, she took Nina to the public clinic. The doctor, a weary woman with kind eyes and a stethoscope around her neck, ran basic tests. Blood pressure, reflexes. Wait, then she looked at Clara, voice gentle but firm. "She's showing signs of mild malnutrition. Low iron, low protein. Her body is weakening because it's not getting what it needs to grow." Clara's throat closed. "But I feed her every day." "Quantity isn't always enough," the doctor said softly. "Quality matters. Her body is starving for nutrients, even if her stomach is full of rice." The words echoed in Clara's chest like a death knell. That night, after the children slept, she sat at the table, head in her hands, silent tears soaking the wood grain beneath her fingers. She'd worked so hard, given everything, and still it wasn't enough to keep her daughter strong. She thought of Victor, sipping wine in a New York penthouse, dining on salmon and truffle risotto, never once wondering if Nina had eaten fruit that week. Rage flared hot and sudden, but it died just as fast, replaced by a cold, heavy shame. How could I let this happen? Livia found her there, long past midnight. "May?" she whispered, kneeling beside her. "What's wrong?" Clara couldn't speak, just shook her head, tears falling freely now. Livia wrapped her arms around her, holding her tight. "It's not your fault," she murmured. "You do everything, everything. But not enough," Clara choked out. "Not enough to keep her healthy." "We'll fix it," Livia said fiercely. "We'll find a way. Maybe I can take that job." "No," Clara interrupted, pulling back to look at her. "Your future isn't the price we pay for today's hunger. There has to be another way." But what way? The school salary barely covered rent. The cake sales had slowed. Her online course wouldn't yield a certificate for months. Months they might not have. The next day, she returned to the clinic with Nina for follow-up tests. As they waited, a nurse handed her a pamphlet. Community Nutrition Program, free supplements for children under 12. Clara's hands trembled as she read it. Eligibility required proof of income below a certain threshold. She qualified. She qualified. The realization hit her like a blow. She, Clara Langford, once hostess of galas, owner of silk gowns and vacations in Tuscany, now met the government's definition of extreme poverty, and her daughter needed help. She filled out the forms with shaking hands, answering questions about monthly income, housing conditions, food access. Each checkmark felt like a surrender. But for Nina, she'd surrender 1,000 times. When they left with a small box of iron-fortified vitamins and protein powder, Nina clutched it like treasure. "Does this mean I'll get strong again, May?" "Yes, meu amor," Clara whispered, kissing her forehead. "You'll fly again, I promise." But that night, as she lay in bed listening to the soft hum of the city, a new fear took root. What if the next crisis came faster than she could respond? What if Mateus fell ill? What if Theo needed glasses? What if the school raised fees again? She had no safety net, no one to call, no savings, no cushion, just her hands, her mind, and the relentless will to keep going. She thought of quitting the course, taking any job, cleaning offices, washing cars, anything that paid cash fast. But then she remembered Dona Elsa's words, "You're building something. Don't tear it down for a shortcut." So she didn't quit. Instead, she woke at 4 a.m., baked twice as many cakes, sold them at the market before school, then rushed to her shift at Escola Esperanca. She skipped lunch, drank water instead of tea, wore the same blouse 3 days in a row, and every night, she spoon-fed Nina the protein mix with honey, watching for signs of strength returning to her smile. One evening, as she tucked Nina in, her daughter reached up and touched her cheek. "You look tired, May." "I'm okay," Clara said softly. "No," Nina whispered. "You're sad, but you're still here." Clara's breath hitched. She leaned down, resting her forehead against her daughter's. Always, because even in the darkest hour, even when her body ached and her soul felt thin as paper, she would never disappear on them the way he did. She might not have wealth. She might not have security, but she had presence. And that, she vowed in the silence of that room, would be enough. Even if it broke her, even if it killed her, she would stay, because love wasn't a grand gesture in a mansion. It was a spoonful of protein powder at midnight. It was walking 6 kilometers with blisters so your child could have shoes. It was standing in a clinic, swallowing your pride so they could grow strong. And as rain began to fall outside, soft, steady, cleansing, Clara Langford wiped her tears, stood up, and walked back into the kitchen to prepare tomorrow's meals. Tea drifting to Livia, who sat at the table, staring at a university brochure with a grimness that made Clara's chest ache. Livia hadn't spoken much since the clinic visit, but Clara knew her daughter, knew the set of her jaw, the way she folded her school papers with unnecessary precision. She was making a decision, and Clara feared she already knew what it was. That afternoon, as Clara hung laundry on the rusted balcony line, Livia appeared beside her, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the street below. "I've been thinking," she began, voice low. "Ms. Carvalho at the market said they need someone full-time. Cleaning, stocking, cashier work. Pays 1,200 a month. Plus meals." Clara's hands stilled on a damp shirt. "Livia, I'm serious, May," she cut in, turning to face her. "Nina's sick because we don't have enough. Theo's shoes are falling apart. Mateus needs new glasses. And you're working yourself to bone." Her voice cracked. "I can't watch you break just to keep us afloat." Clara turned fully, pulling the wet shirt to her chest like a shield. "And what happens to your future? To NYU? To the life you've worked for since you were 12? My future doesn't matter if my family starves." Livia shot back, tears welling. "Don't you see? I can help. Really help. Not just with homework or watching Theo, but with money. Real money." The words hung between them, raw and desperate. Clara stepped forward, cupping Livia's face in her hands. Her daughter's skin was warm, her eyes fierce, but beneath the anger, Clara saw exhaustion, fear, love twisted into guilt. "Listen to me," she said, voice trembling but firm. "Your future matters more than anything. Not because you'll be rich or famous, but because you'll be free. Free to choose. Free to build. Free to never have to stand in a clinic wondering if your child is starving." She pulled Livia into a tight embrace, whispering into her hair, "I didn't survive all this just to lose you to a job at a market. You're meant for words, for truth, for changing the world with your voice." not scrubbing floors so someone else can live comfortably. Livia clung to her, shoulders shaking. But what if I'm being selfish? Dreaming while you suffer? You're not, Clara said, pulling back to look her in the eyes. Dreaming is your duty now. Studying, writing, believing there's more. That's how you honor us. Not by giving up, but by rising. Silence settled between them, filled only by the distant honk of a bus and the flutter of laundry in the wind. Then Livia nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. But if things get worse, I'm not watching you disappear. I won't disappear, Clara promised. Not like him. Never like him. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat at the table with her laptop open, scrolling through scholarship databases, grant applications, community aid programs. Her eyes burned from fatigue, but her mind raced. If she couldn't earn more, maybe she could access more. She found it just past 2 a.m., a small nonprofit offering emergency educational grants for families in sudden economic hardship. The deadline was in 3 days. The amount, 3,000 reis, enough to cover 2 months of school fees, new shoes, and a proper grocery run. She began writing the application immediately, her fingers flying over the keys, describing their fall not with shame, but with quiet dignity. She didn't mention Victor by name, didn't beg. She simply told the truth. I am a mother of 5. My husband left without warning. I work, I study, I fight, but my children's education is not negotiable. She submitted it at 4:17 a.m. And as dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, she stood at the window, watching the city wake. She didn't know if the grant would come. She didn't know if Nina would recover fully. She didn't know if she could keep this pace much longer. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Livia would stay in school. Even if it meant selling every memory she had left. Even if it meant walking barefoot so her daughter could walk into a university hall with her head high. Because some battles aren't fought with money or power. They're fought with a single, unwavering refusal to let love become collateral damage. And Clara Langford had already lost too much to surrender what truly mattered. Outside, a bird took flight from a nearby rooftop, wings wide, heading east, toward the rising sun. She watched it until it vanished, then turned back to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and began making breakfast. One more day, one more step, one more act of quiet rebellion against despair. And in that moment, exhausted but unbroken, Clara knew. She wasn't. Her hands didn't shake, her breath didn't catch, but something inside her, something small and still tender, cracked. She deleted the email, washed her face in the staff restroom, smoothed her blouse, and returned to her desk as if nothing had happened. But that night, after tucking the children in, she sat at the table with her laptop open, the glow of the screen her only light. The online accounting course blinked on the screen. Module 5, Financial Statement Analysis. She hadn't logged in for 3 days. Too tired, too defeated. Yet here she was again, because stopping wasn't an option. Not when every second spent learning was a brick laid toward a future where she wouldn't have to beg for scraps. She scrolled through the lesson, forcing her tired mind to focus. But the numbers blurred. Her eyes burned. She leaned back, pressing her palms to her temples, and let out a breath that was half sob, half laugh. What's the point? She whispered to the empty room. Then soft footsteps. Livia appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She set one beside Clara's laptop. You're still studying? Clara nodded, not looking up. I have to. If I finish this course, I can take the certification exam. And with certification, maybe I can get a real accounting job. One that pays enough to breathe. Livia finished softly, sitting beside her. To stop choosing between shoes and school supplies. Clara finally looked at her. I'm so tired, Livia. Tired of fighting for basics. Tired of pretending I'm not scared every single day. I know, Livia said, voice gentle. But you're not alone in it anymore. We see you. We feel you. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I entered the City Youth Writing Contest. The one with the 2,000 real prize. Clara's eyes widened. You didn't tell me. I wanted to surprise you if I won. Livia smiled faintly. I wrote about you. About how you're the silent architect of our survival. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. Oh, meu amor. The winners are announced Friday. Livia took her hand. If I win, it's yours. All of it. Clara pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. Win or not, you already gave me everything. But the truth was, she couldn't wait for Friday. Couldn't bank on hope. She needed a plan now. The next morning, before her shift, she walked to the public library, her sanctuary since childhood. The smell of old paper and quiet stillness calmed her racing thoughts. She went straight to the career section, scanning titles until her fingers landed on a thin booklet. Freelance bookkeeping for beginners, start earning from home. Her heart quickened. She checked it out, brought it home, and stayed up until 3 a.m., taking notes, sketching sample spreadsheets, practicing with mock data. She remembered everything: double entry systems, balance sheets, cash flow projections. It was all still there, buried beneath years of diapers and dinner menus, waiting to be unearthed. By dawn, she drafted a simple flyer. Clara Langford, accurate, confidential bookkeeping, affordable rates, trusted by families and small businesses. She didn't have clients, didn't have references, but she had truth and precision, and 15 years of managing complex household budgets like a CFO. That weekend, with Livia's help, she printed 10 copies and posted them at the community center, the bakery, the laundromat, even the local pharmacy. Days passed. No calls. Then, on a rainy Thursday, the phone rang. Hello. Clara answered, voice cautious. Hi, is this Clara? From the flyer. A woman's voice, nervous, young. I run a small daycare. My books are a mess. I need help before tax season. But I can only pay 150 reis a week. Clara's breath caught. I can start tomorrow. The daycare was tiny. 6 children, colorful walls, toys scattered everywhere. The owner, Juliana, was barely older than Livia, eyes wide with stress. I've been doing everything myself, she confessed, handing Clara a shoebox full of receipts. I don't even know if I'm making money or losing it. Clara spent 4 hours organizing, categorizing, inputting data into a free spreadsheet. By evening, she had a clear monthly report. Juliana was barely breaking even, but with a few cost adjustments, she could turn a small profit. Juliana cried when she saw it. You saved me, she whispered. No, Clara said gently. You showed up every day for these children. That's what saved you. I just made the numbers speak. She left with 150 reis in cash and a promise of ongoing work. That night, she didn't tell the children about the money. Not yet, but she bought real milk, eggs, chicken, and Nina's favorite mango. As they ate dinner, real food, warm and plentiful, Theo looked up, grinning. May, this tastes like the old days. Clara smiled, her heart full. The best days aren't behind us, meu anjo. They're ahead. Later, alone in the kitchen, she opened her laptop again. Not for the course this time, but to create a real portfolio. Proper email. A simple website using a free builder. She titled it, Clara Langford Clarity Through Numbers. Because that's what she offered now. Not just bookkeeping. Clarity, control, hope, rendered in columns and totals. And as she clicked publish, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. Victor had taken her past, but he could never take her mind. Her resilience, her ability to rebuild one honest ledger, one saved family, one reclaimed dream at a time. Outside, the rain had stopped. Stars blinked through the clouds. And for the first time in a long time, Clara Langford didn't just survive the night. She allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that the worst was behind them. Then, on a gray Monday afternoon, the landlord knocked. Clara opened the door, flour still dusting her hands from baking extra cakes for the weekend market. The man avoided her eyes, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Senora Langford. Screen her only light. The online accounting course blinked on the screen. Module 5, Financial Statement Analysis. She hadn't logged in for 3 days. Too tired. Too defeated. Yet here she was again. Because stopping wasn't an option. Not when every second spent learning was a brick laid toward a future where she wouldn't have to beg for scraps. She scrolled through the lesson, forcing her tired mind to focus. But the numbers blurred. Her eyes burned. She leaned back, pressing her palms to her temples, and let out a breath that was half sob, half laugh. "What's the point?" she whispered to the empty room. Then soft footsteps. Livia appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She set one beside Clara's laptop. "You're still studying?" Clara nodded, not looking up. "I have to. If I finish this course, I can take the certification exam. And with certification, maybe I can get a real accounting job. One that pays enough to breathe," Livia finished softly, sitting beside her. "To stop choosing between shoes and school supplies." Clara finally looked at her. "I'm so tired, Livia. Tired of fighting for basics. Tired of pretending I'm not scared every single day." "I know," Livia said, voice gentle. "But you're not alone in it anymore. We see you. We feel you." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I entered the City Youth Writing Contest. The one with the 2000 real prize." Clara's eyes widened. "You didn't tell me. I wanted to surprise you if I won." Livia smiled faintly. "I wrote about you. About how you're the silent architect of our survival." Tears pricked Clara's eyes. "Oh, meu amor. The winners are announced Friday." Livia took her hand. "If I win, it's yours. All of it." Clara pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "Win or not, you already gave me everything." But the truth was, she couldn't wait for Friday. Couldn't bank on hope. She needed a plan now. The next morning, before her shift, she walked to the public library, her sanctuary since childhood. The smell of old paper and quiet stillness calmed her racing thoughts. She went straight to the career section, scanning titles until her fingers landed on a thin booklet. "Freelance bookkeeping for beginners. Start earning from home." Her heart quickened. She checked it out, brought it home, and stayed up until 3 a.m., taking notes, sketching sample spreadsheets, practicing with mock data. She remembered everything: double-entry systems, balance sheets, cash flow projections. It was all still there, buried beneath years of diapers and dinner menus, waiting to be unearthed. By dawn, she drafted a simple flyer. Clara Langford, accurate, confidential bookkeeping, affordable rates, trusted by families and small businesses. She didn't have clients, didn't have references, but she had truth and precision, and 15 years of managing complex household budgets like a CFO. That weekend, with Livia's help, she printed 10 copies and posted them at the community center, the bakery, the laundromat, even the local pharmacy. Days passed. No calls. Then, on a rainy Thursday, the phone rang. "Hello," Clara answered, voice cautious. "Hi, is this Clara?" From the flyer. A woman's voice, nervous, young. "I run a small daycare. My books are a mess. I need help before tax season. But I can only pay 150 reis a week." Clara's breath caught. "I can start tomorrow." The daycare was tiny. 6 children, colorful walls, toys scattered everywhere. The owner, Juliana, was barely older than Livia, eyes wide with stress. "I've been doing everything myself," she confessed, handing Clara a shoebox full of receipts. "I don't even know if I'm making money or losing it." Clara spent 4 hours organizing, categorizing, inputting data into a free spreadsheet. By evening, she had a clear monthly report. Juliana was barely breaking even, but with a few cost adjustments, she could turn a small profit. Juliana cried when she saw it. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," Clara said gently. "You showed up every day for these children. That's what saved you. I just made the numbers speak." She left with 150 reis in cash and a promise of ongoing work. That night, she didn't tell the children about the money. Not yet, but she bought real milk, eggs, chicken, and Nina's favorite mango. As they ate dinner, real food, warm and plentiful, Theo looked up, grinning. "May, this tastes like the old days." Clara smiled, her heart full. The best days aren't behind us, Meu Anjo. They're ahead. Later, alone in the kitchen, she opened her laptop again. Not for the course this time, but to create a real portfolio. Proper email. A simple website using a free builder. She titled it, Clara Langford Clarity Through Numbers. Because that's what she offered now. Not just bookkeeping. Clarity, control, hope, rendered in columns and totals. And as she clicked publish, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. Victor had taken her past, but he could never take her mind, her resilience, her ability to rebuild one honest ledger, one saved family, one reclaimed dream at a time. Outside, the rain had stopped. Stars blinked through the clouds. And for the first time in a long time, Clara Langford didn't just survive the night. She allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that the worst was behind them. Then, on a gray Monday afternoon, the landlord knocked. Clara opened the door, flour still dusting her hands from baking extra cakes for the weekend market. The man avoided her eyes, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Senora Langford. Got an offer on the building, he said quietly. Cash. From an investor. They're converting all units into short-term rentals. Airbnb. You know. Clara's stomach dropped. But, our lease. It's month to month, he replied, voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. They're doubling the rent starting next month. I can't say no. I've got my own loans. He handed her a notice. 30 days to vacate. She took it, fingers numb. Where are we supposed to go? He didn't answer, just nodded once and walked away, shoulders hunched as if carrying his own shame. The paper trembled in her hand. Double the rent. She couldn't afford the current one. How could she pay twice that? Inside, the children were laughing over homework. Theo was drawing a spaceship. Nina was humming. For a heartbeat, Clara considered hiding the notice, pretending everything was fine. But she'd done that once, and it had cost Nina her health. That night, after dinner, she sat them all down in the small living area, the 5 of them on mismatched chairs and the floor. I have something to tell you, she began, voice steady but soft. Livia's eyes narrowed instantly. What happened? The landlord sold the building. We have to move in 30 days. Silence. Mateus was the first to speak. Move where? I don't know yet, Clara admitted. But we'll find somewhere. Together. Isabella stood abruptly. This is the 3rd place in a year. When does it stop, May? When do we get to stay? Her voice cracked with a pain too deep for her 16 years. Clara's heart shattered. I don't have that answer, Meu Amor, but I promise you this. No matter where we sleep, you'll always have me. And we'll always have each other. But that night, after they'd gone to bed, panic clawed at her throat. She scrolled through rental listings. Tiny rooms in dangerous neighborhoods, shared bathrooms, prices still out of reach. Her freelance work wasn't steady enough. The school job barely covered basics. She sat on the edge of her mattress, hands pressed to her temples, breathing through the rising tide of despair. Then a soft knock. Dona Elsa stood in the doorway of Clara's tiny bedroom at the school. She'd been staying there 2 nights a week to save bus fare, sleeping on a cot in the storage room behind the office. You look like you've seen a ghost, the older woman said, stepping inside. Clara showed her the notice. I don't know what to do. Dona Elsa read it slowly, then looked up, eyes sharp. You've been sleeping on that cot like it's nothing, working double shifts, helping every parent who asks, and you think I haven't noticed? Clara didn't answer. There's a room, Dona Elsa said quietly. At my house, back room, small but private, has its own entrance. My late husband's workshop, we converted it years ago. Clara's breath caught. You'd let us stay there? Not all of you, Dona Elsa said gently. But you and the younger ones, Theo and Nina, can stay with me. Livia and the boys can keep this apartment a few more weeks while you sort things out. Split the cost. Tears filled Clara's eyes. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, Dona Elsa said, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. I'm offering. Because I've watched you carry the weight of the world without complaining. And no one should have to do that alone. The next day, Clara told the children. Livia resisted at first. I should be the one moving out, not Theo. But Clara held her gaze. You need stability to finish the year strong, she said. Let me protect what I can. Moving day came fast. They packed their few belongings into worn suitcases and cardboard boxes. As they carried the last box down the stairs, Theo clung to Clara's leg. Will we have a window in the new place, May? Yes, she said, kissing his hair. And you'll see the school bell tower from it. You'll hear the morning chime. It wasn't much, but it was shelter and kindness. That night in Donna Elsa's tidy back room, walls lined with old books, a small stove, a proper bed, Clara tucked Nina and Theo in under clean sheets. Nina reached for her hand. Are we safe now? Clara squeezed her fingers. Yes, meu coração. We're safe. But as she sat in the dark, listening to their quiet breaths, she knew this was only temporary, a reprieve, not a solution. And yet, in the stillness, something shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was being seen. But peace, Clara had learned, is often interrupted by the past. It happened on a humid Thursday. She was at the school office, finalizing the monthly budget report, when the mail arrived. Among the usual flyers and invoices was a thick, cream-colored envelope with no return address. Only her name written in neat, unfamiliar block letters. Her pulse quickened. She slid it open with a trembling finger. Inside, a bank transfer confirmation, 5,000 reis, deposited that morning into her personal account, the one she'd opened with the daycare earnings, the one no one knew about, and a single sheet of paper, typed, "You never deserved this. None of you did. I looked away when I should have spoken up. This isn't enough, but it's a start." A friend who stayed silent too long. No signature, no clue, but Clara knew. Only someone from Victor's inner circle would have access to that kind of discreet transfer. Someone who knew she'd never accept money from him, but might accept it from a ghost of conscience. She sank into her chair, the paper clutched in her hand, tears welling hot and sudden. Not tears of relief, tears of rage, because this quiet, anonymous gesture was proof that others had seen what Victor was doing. They'd watched him dismantle a family from the inside out, and they'd said nothing, until now. Clara? Donna Elsa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You've gone pale. Clara handed her the letter without a word. Donna Elsa read it slowly, then looked up, her expression unreadable. What will you do? Clara wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I don't know. That evening, she sat at the small table in the back room, staring at her laptop screen. The bank notification glowed. 5,000 Brazilian reals, available balance. 5,000 reis, could cover 3 months of rent. New uniforms, glasses for Mateus, a proper doctor's checkup for Theo, who'd been squinting at the board. Groceries without counting every centavo. Could give them breathing room, but accepting it felt like swallowing ash. Because this wasn't kindness. It was guilt, wrapped in cash, sent by someone who profited from Victor's empire while her children went hungry. She thought of Nina's thin arms, of Livia's exhausted eyes, of Theo asking, just last week, May, is it true we're poor? Her heart warred with her pride. Late that night, after everyone slept, she walked to the small park across the street, sat on a bench beneath a jacaranda tree, its purple blossoms drifting like fallen stars. She pulled out her phone and dialed Livia. May, it's 1 a.m., her daughter whispered, voice thick with sleep. I need your opinion, Clara said quietly. Someone sent money. Anonymous. 5,000 reis. Silence. Then, take it. You don't even know who it's from. I don't care, Livia said fiercely. They owe us. All of them. Victor's world got rich while you bled for us alone. If one of them finally feels shame, let them pay for it. But what does it say about us if we accept blood money? It says we're human, Livia replied. And we're still fighting. Clara closed her eyes. The night air was warm, scented with earth and blossoms. The next morning, she didn't withdraw the money. Instead, she went to the bank and opened a new, separate account, strictly for the children's needs. School fees, medical care, educational materials, nothing else. Then she wrote a note, short and clear, and mailed it, though she didn't know the sender's address. She trusted it would find its way. Thank you for seeing us. We will use this to heal, not to forget. But know this, what my children needed wasn't money. It was a father who stayed. And no amount can buy that back. She didn't sign it. Let them wonder. That weekend, she took Mateus to the optometrist. Paid in full. Bought Theo a pair of blue sneakers. He'd wanted them for months. Enrolled Nina in a weekend art workshop at the community center. As she watched her daughter mix paints with other children, laughter bubbling from her lips, Clara felt something shift inside her. The money hadn't fixed the past, but it had given her children a moment of normalcy, a chance to be kids again, not survivors. And maybe that was enough. That night, back in the quiet of Dona Elsa's house, she sat with her accounting textbook open, but her mind wasn't on debits and credits. She was thinking about justice. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that builds schools instead of mansions. The kind that raises children with love, not absence. Victor had tried to erase them, but here they were, still standing, still healing, still loving. And no anonymous check, no penthouse in New York, no curated life of convenience could ever rival the strength in a mother's hands, or the light in her children's eyes when they finally feel safe again. Outside, the jacaranda petals continued to fall. One afternoon, as she organized receipts for Juliana's daycare, Dona Elsa walked in holding a flyer. The neighborhood association is hosting a unity market next month. Local vendors, food, crafts, free booth for families in need. Clara looked up, skeptical. I don't have a stall or inventory. You have your cakes, Dona Elsa said simply. And your hands. And your story. Clara hesitated. Selling cakes at the corner market was one thing. Standing in public, under bright lights, with curious eyes watching, some pitying, some judging, felt like stepping onto a stage she hadn't rehearsed for. But that night, as she baked banana bread, Nina wandered into the kitchen, watching her with those quiet, observant eyes. May, she said, what if we made more than cakes? Clara paused. What do you mean? Your cakes are the best, Nina said, climbing onto a stool. But I can paint labels. Livia can write signs. Mateus can build a little stand. We have scrap wood in the school shed. Isabella can design a banner. She grinned. We can be a team. Clara's throat tightened. Her children, once fractured by silence and shame, were offering to stand with her. Not behind her. With her. She pulled Nina into a hug. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. What began as a simple cake table soon became something far more beautiful. Livia crafted elegant signs with calligraphy. Langford sweets, made with love, not luxury. Isabella painted a banner with a golden sun rising over 5 small figures holding hands. Mateus, with help from Dona Elsa's nephew, built a sturdy wooden cart with fold-out shelves. Theo insisted on wearing a little apron and handing out samples with a solemn bow. And Nina? She wrapped each cake in handmade paper adorned with tiny hearts. The morning of the Unity Market, the sky was clear, the air warm with the scent of blooming frangipani. Clara stood behind their booth, heart pounding. As neighbors, strangers, even former acquaintances from her old life drifted past. At first, few stopped. Then a woman from the community center recognized her. Clara? Is that you? Clara nodded, forcing a smile. Cakes. All homemade. The woman bought 3. Then came another. And another. By midday, their table was surrounded. People weren't just buying cakes. They were buying hope. They saw a mother who hadn't broken. Children who still smiled. A family that had turned pain into purpose. A vendor from the next stall, a seamstress named Rosa, leaned over. You should sell more than sweets, she said. You're good with numbers. Help us track our sales? I'll pay you in fabric and word of mouth. Clara's eyes widened. Really? Really? Rosa said, nodding. We've all got something to give. Maybe your gift isn't just baking. It's holding things together. By sunset, they'd sold out. Not just the cakes, but every single item. Livia counted the money, eyes wide. May, we made over 800 reis. Clara didn't cry. Not there. But her hands trembled as she folded the cash into her apron pocket. That night, back at Dona Elsa's, the children were buzzing with energy. We should do this every month, Theo declared, still wearing his apron. Isabella, for once, wasn't sketching alone. She was showing Mateus how to sketch a logo for Langford Family Ventures. Even Livia laughed. A real, unguarded sound Clara hadn't heard in years. Later, as she washed the mixing bowls, Dona Elsa appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of guava juice. You created more than a market stall today, she said quietly. What did I create? Clara asked, drying her hands. A lifeline, Dona Elsa replied. Not just for you. For all the mothers here who watch their children go hungry and think they're alone. You showed them they're not. Clara looked out the window. The moon hung low, silver and full. She thought of Victor. Somewhere in a sleek apartment, dining alone, surrounded by things but starved for meaning. And here she was in a modest kitchen, with flour in her hair, children laughing in the next room, and hands that had turned despair into something others could taste and believe in. The next week, 3 more vendors asked for her help with their books. Then a local tailor. Then a small bookstore. She started offering community bookkeeping. Low cost, sliding scale, payment in goods or services accepted. Word spread. Not as Victor Langford's abandoned wife, but as Clara, the woman who could turn chaos into order, who baked hope into banana bread, whose children stood beside her like a shield and a crown. And for the first time since the fall, Clara didn't feel like a ghost in her own life. She felt seen, valued, necessary, not because of who she'd lost, but because of who she'd become. Outside, the city slept, but inside that quiet house, a new future was rising. Not in silence, but in the joyful clatter of mixing bowls. Tea then, one rainy Tuesday, the bank notification appeared on her phone. Incoming transfer, 15,000 Brazilian reals sender. International account, anonymous. Her breath caught. She dropped the spoon she was using to stir Nina's porridge. The children looked up from the table. May, what's wrong? Livia asked, instantly alert. Clara stared at the screen, heart hammering against her ribs. She knew that amount, knew that timing, knew the cold precision of it. It was Victor. Not the Victor who left a note and vanished, but the Victor who watched from afar, who heard whispers of her resilience, who now sought to buy absolution with a wire transfer. She walked to the bedroom, shut the door, and sank onto the edge of the bed, phone trembling in her hand. A message followed moments later. Short, emotionless, sent from a number she didn't recognize but somehow knew in her bones. For the children. Medical. School. Whatever they need. Don't reply. Just take it. V. No, I'm sorry. No, how are you? No acknowledgement of the years of silence, the hunger, the fear. Just money. As if love could be replaced by digits in a bank account. Tears burned her eyes. Not of gratitude, but of fury. Because this wasn't generosity. It was convenience. A way to ease his conscience without facing the wreckage he created. She thought of Nina's recovery, of Theo's new shoes, of Livia's quiet determination to apply to university despite everything. They hadn't needed his money to heal, they'd needed his presence, his love, his fatherhood, and he'd given none of it. Instead, he offered cash like it was a bandage for a wound he'd carved himself. That afternoon, she didn't tell the children. Not yet. She needed clarity. She went to the park. The same bench beneath the jacaranda, now bare of blossoms but still holding memories. She sat for an hour, watching families pass by. Fathers holding toddlers' hands, mothers laughing with teenage daughters, couples sharing ice cream. She thought, this is what he threw away. Not just me, Not just a wife. Family. A life that could have been ordinary, messy, beautiful. And now he wanted to erase his guilt with a transaction? No. She stood, walked to the nearest bank branch, and initiated a reversal. But she didn't just send the money back. She attached a note. Typed, calm, final. Our children don't need your money. They needed you, since you couldn't give them that. Keep your silence and your guilt. We are healing without you, and we are better for it. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. That evening, over dinner, Livia finally asked, "Did something happen today, May? You've been quiet." Clara looked. Around the table, at Nina drawing on a napkin, Mateus explaining a math problem to Theo, Isabella humming softly as she braided her hair. "Yes," she said gently. "Someone tried to pay for what they broke." Livia's eyes narrowed. "Him?" Clara nodded. "What did you do?" "I sent it back." A beat of silence. Then Livia smiled. A slow, proud smile. "Good." Isabella looked up. "Does this mean he's gone for good?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "But it doesn't matter anymore. We've already built something he can't take away." Later that night, as she tucked Theo in, he whispered, "May, do you think Dad ever wonders about us?" Clara smoothed his hair. "Maybe, but wondering isn't loving. And loving isn't just showing up when it's easy. It's staying when it's hard." He nodded, already drifting to sleep. "You stayed." "Yes, meu anjo," she whispered. "I stayed." And in that moment, she realized Victor's money hadn't been a lifeline. It had been a test. And she'd passed. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with dignity. Because true strength isn't in accepting scraps from the table of the one who abandoned you. It's in building your own table and inviting the world to sit. Outside, the rain had stopped. Stars blinked through the clouds. And Clara Langford, once erased, now stood, unshaken. Now, she stood in the hallway of Escola Esperanca, not as an assistant, but as coordinator of finance and community programs. A title Dona Elza had insisted on after Clara restructured the entire school's budget, secured 3 municipal grants, and launched a parent literacy initiative that doubled family engagement. Her office, once a cluttered supply closet, was now lined with shelves of organized ledgers, student art, and a single framed photo. Her 5 children, smiling on the day they'd opened their first proper Langford Sweets stall at the Unity Market. Clara, Dona Elza appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, but her eyes sparkled. "The City Education Board just called. They want you to speak at the regional conference next month. Topic: Financial Resilience in Underfunded Schools." Clara blinked. "Me? I'm not a speaker. I'm just a woman who turned scarcity into strategy." Dona Elza finished gently. "They've heard about your work. About how you helped 15 small vendors keep their businesses alive during the last economic dip. That's not just anything. That's leadership." Later that afternoon, as she walked home beneath a golden sunset, her phone buzzed. It was Livia. "May, I got it. Full scholarship to UFRJ, journalism and social communication." Her voice trembled with joy. "They cited my essay about you as part of the selection." Clara stopped on the sidewalk, tears blurring the streetlights. "Oh, meu amor, I knew you would." "But it's not just me," Livia said, voice softening. "They're offering a mentorship program for young women from vulnerable backgrounds. I told them about Nina, about Isabella. They said they'd consider them in 2 years." Clara pressed a hand to her chest, as if to hold her heart in place. That evening, over a simple dinner of rice, beans, and roasted chicken, bought with earnings from her latest bookkeeping client, Clara shared the news. The apartment they now rented was modest but stable. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a balcony where Nina grew herbs in recycled bottles. It wasn't a mansion, but it was theirs. "Does this mean you'll travel, May?" Theo asked, eyes wide. "Just to the conference," she said, smiling. "But while I'm there, I'll talk about schools like ours. About how communities can support each other when systems fail." Isabella, now 18 and accepted into an art residency, looked up from her sketchbook. You'll tell them about the Unity market, right? About how we turned pain into something people could taste. I'll tell them everything, Clara said. Later, as she sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, Donna Elsa joined her, handing her a folder. What's this? Your certification, Donna Elsa said. You passed the national accounting exam with honors. Clara opened it slowly. There it was, Clara Langford, certified public accountant. She hadn't told anyone she'd taken the test. Had studied in stolen moments on buses late at night between batches of cake. Now it was real. She touched the paper, tears falling silently. Not for the title, but for the journey. For the nights she'd cried in the dark, wondering if she was enough. For the days she'd walked 6 kilometers with blisters to save bus fare. For the moment she'd sent back Victor's money and chose dignity over desperation. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And she was using every hard-won skill to lift others as she climbed. The next week, she stood before a room of educators, administrators, and policymakers. She didn't wear a suit. Just a simple blue dress. The same one she'd worn the day she walked into Escola Esperanca for the job interview. I'm not here because I succeeded despite poverty, she said, voice clear, steady. I'm here because I learned what truly matters in it. Community, creativity, and the quiet courage of mothers who refuse to let their children believe they're worthless. Applause followed. But what stayed with her wasn't the clapping. It was the woman in the back row, tears streaming down her face, mouthing thank you. That night, back in her quiet apartment, Clara opened her laptop. Not to work, but to write. A proposal for a community financial literacy hub. A place where single parents, small vendors, and young entrepreneurs could learn budgeting, bookkeeping, and self-advocacy. She titled it, From Survival to Strategy. And as she typed, her children asleep in the next room, she knew this wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd built. With her hands, with her heart, with every no she'd turned into a next step. And in that moment, Clara Langford, once abandoned, once invisible, felt the full weight of her own worth. Not because a man left her, feared would never return. Mateus, now 16, had found his passion in robotics, thanks to a scholarship Clara secured through a partnership she'd negotiated between Escola Esperanca and a local tech incubator. He spent afternoons in the school lab, soldering circuits, his quiet intensity now a focused flame rather than a withdrawn shadow. Isabella's art residency took her to Minas Gerais, but she returned every month with canvases full of color, portraits of street vendors, mothers waiting at bus stops, children playing in puddles. Her latest piece, titled The Woman Who Stayed, hung in a small gallery in downtown Sao Paulo. It showed a woman's back, arms outstretched like wings, shielding 5 small figures beneath her. No face, just presence, just protection. And Nina, now 12, had been accepted into the city's youth art mentorship program. The day she got the letter, she ran through the apartment, shouting, "May! They said my work has emotional honesty." She'd started painting again. Not just hearts on rocks, but full scenes. A kitchen with a single light bulb, a mother's hands kneading dough, 5 chairs around a small table. But it was Theo who gave Clara the moment she would carry in her heart forever. One afternoon, she returned from a meeting at the education ministry to find him waiting on the balcony, holding a large sheet of white paper. "May," he said, eyes serious beyond his 9 years. "I did something for school." He unrolled it. It was a drawing crayon on cardstock. In the center stood a woman with long brown hair, arms wide, wearing a simple blue dress. Around her, 5 children clung to her sleeves, her waist, her hands. Above them, a sun-radiated light labeled Love. Below, in careful block letters, Theo had written, "My mother is my hero." Clara knelt, her vision blurring. "Oh, Theo." "It's for the school exhibition," he said shyly. "Everyone had to draw their hero. Some picked superheroes. I picked you." She pulled him into her arms, breathing in the scent of his hair, soap and sunshine and childhood. That night, After he was asleep, she pinned the drawing to her office wall at Escola Esperanca, right beside her accounting certificate. The next day, Livia came to visit during her lunch break. She stopped in the doorway, staring at the drawing. "He's right, you know," she said softly. Clara looked up from her computer. "About what?" "That you're our hero." Livia's voice cracked. "Not because you're perfect, but because you never left. Even when you had every reason to break, you held us together." Clara reached for her daughter's hand. "I didn't do it alone. You all carried me too." Later that week, the school hosted its annual exhibition. Parents filled the halls, admiring science projects, poetry, handmade crafts. And there, in the main corridor, framed simply in black matting, hung Theo's drawing. A woman from the ministry stopped in front of it. She read the title, then turned to Clara, eyes glistening. This is why your financial literacy proposal was approved. Not just because it's smart, but because it's human." Clara nodded, throat tight. That evening, the family gathered on their balcony, Nina sketching, Mateus explaining a new robot design, Isabella braiding Livia's hair, Theo leaning against Clara's side. No one spoke for a long moment. Just the hum of the city below, the clink of spoons in dessert bowls, the warmth of shared silence. Then Livia said, "Do you ever wonder what he's doing right now?" Clara looked at her children, alive, curious, whole, and shook her head. Not anymore, because the man who abandoned them had become a footnote in their story. What mattered was the chapter they were writing now, with courage as their ink, love as their compass, and a mother's unwavering presence as the steady hand that turned pain into purpose. And as the stars blinked awake above Sao Paulo, Clara Langford knew. Her children weren't just surviving. They were blooming. Then, on a cool October morning, the phone rang. She was in her office at Escola Esperanca, reviewing blueprints for the new Community Financial Literacy Hub, now officially funded and set to open in 6 months. The call came from an international number, unknown. She almost didn't answer, but some whisper of intuition, made her press accept. Clara, a voice, thin and raspy, barely recognizable. Older, frilier, her breath caught. Victor, silence stretched, thick with the weight of a decade. I don't have much time," he said, voice trembling. "Cancer. Advanced. They give me weeks, maybe less." Clara's hand tightened on the phone. She didn't speak. "I know I don't deserve to ask," he continued, words slow, labored. "But I'd like to see them, the children, just once, to say I'm sorry, to tell them I wasn't always the man who left." Her chest ached, not with love, but with the sorrow of wasted years. "They're not children anymore," she said quietly. "Livia's in her 3rd year of journalism. Mateus is interning at an engineering firm. Isabella's exhibiting in Rio next month. Nina teaches art to younger kids. Theo, he's studying biology. He wants to heal people." A pause, then a choked breath. "You raised them beautifully." "I had to," she replied, voice steady. "Because you didn't." Another silence, longer this time. Outside, children laughed in the courtyard. Life moved on as it always did. "Will you let me see them?" he whispered. Clara closed her eyes. She thought of Theo's drawing, of Livia's essays, of the nights she'd cried alone so they wouldn't see her break. She could say no. She should say no. But then she remembered something Dona Elsa once told her. "Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. So you don't carry their absence like a stone in your chest." "I won't stop them from seeing you," she said at last. "But I won't arrange it. And I won't be there." She hung up before he could respond. That evening, she gathered her children in the living room. The air was warm, scented with the cinnamon Nina had used in her baking class. She told them everything about the call, the illness, the request. Livia crossed her arms. "After all this time? Now he wants to say sorry?" Isabella looked down. "I don't know if I even remember his face." Mateus was silent. Theo, now 15, surprised them all. "I want to go," he said quietly. "Not because I miss him, but because I want to look him in the eyes and tell him I turned out okay. Even without him. Clara's heart ached with pride. In the end, they all agreed on their terms. 2 weeks later, they met him in a quiet cafe near the hospital, neutral ground, no expectations. Victor was a shadow of the man he'd been. Thin, pale, leaning on a cane, his once sharp eyes dulled by pain and regret. He stood when they entered, hands trembling. Livia stepped forward first. "You don't get to cry," she said, voice low but firm. "You don't get to act like the victim. We lived through what you ran from." He nodded, tears already falling. "I know." One by one, they spoke, not with hatred but with clarity. Isabella handed him a small print of her painting, The Woman Who Stayed. "This is who raised us," she said. "Not you." Mateus simply shook his hand. "I hope you find peace, but I don't need you to be part of mine." Nina gave him a small sketch, a single olive tree roots deep. "May painted one like this once. You kept it, but you never kept us." And Theo, the youngest, the one who'd asked for years when his father would come back, stood before him last. "I'm not broken," he said, voice steady. "I'm kind and curious, and I love science. And none of that is because of you. It's because of her." He pointed to the window where Clara waited on the sidewalk, not inside, honoring her word, but close enough to protect them if they needed her. Victor wept openly then. Not the performative tears of a man seeking absolution, but the raw, broken sobs of someone who finally saw the cost of his choices. When it was over, the children walked out together, shoulders straight, hands not holding, but close enough to touch if needed. Clara didn't ask what was said. She simply opened her arms. And they came to her, not as wounded children, but as whole adults who had faced their ghost and walked away unshaken. Later that night, as she sat alone on the balcony, her phone buzzed. A message from Victor. "Thank you for raising them better than I ever could. I'm sorry I wasn't the man they deserved. I hope you find peace." She read it once, then deleted it, because she already had peace. Not because he apologized, but because she had built a life so full of love, purpose, and resilience that his absence no longer left a hole, only a reminder of how far she'd come. And as the city lights shimmered below, Clara Langford knew, some endings aren't about closure. They're about confirmation, that she was enough, that she always had been, and that her children, her beautiful, fierce, whole children, transformed. String lights glowed overhead, potted herbs lined the railing, and a small wooden bench held a stack of books and a well-worn accounting ledger. She wasn't alone. Behind her, footsteps approached, familiar, unhurried. Livia, now a reporter for a national news outlet, held 2 mugs of tea. Mateus, soon to graduate as an environmental engineer, carried a tray of Nina's famous banana bread. Isabella, her hair streaked with paint, draped a hand-knitted shawl over Clara's shoulders. And Theo, taller now, his eyes sharp with intelligence, handed her a folder labeled Community Health Initiative, Draft Proposal. "We thought you'd want to see it before the city meeting tomorrow," he said, smiling. Clara took the folder, her heart swelling. This was her life now, not defined by what was taken, but by what was built together. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the São Paulo skyline, painting the clouds in streaks of gold and rose. From below, the sounds of the neighborhood rose like a gentle symphony. Children laughing in the courtyard, a street musician plucking guitar strings, the distant hum of conversation from the Unity Market. Now a permanent fixture, run by a cooperative of women Clara had trained in financial literacy. "Do you ever miss it?" Livia asked softly. "The old house? The life before?" Clara looked at her, really looked, at the strength in her daughter's jaw, the fire in her eyes, the way she carried truth like a torch. "I miss the version of me who believed love was enough to hold someone," Clara said gently. "But I don't miss the silence, the waiting, the way I used to shrink myself so he wouldn't feel crowded." She turned to Theo. "You asked me once if Dad would ever come back." He nodded. "I was 6. I thought if I was good enough, he'd stay."